Hi everyone, hope you're all well and looking forward to the summer, which has just arrived here in the UK. Welcome to all the new subscribers. Keep on coming and supporting this channel. I've had lots of positive comments and a few emails, which I'm always happy to receive and hopefully help some people out with some advice. So thank you for those. Firstly, I'd like to correct a mistake from the last video. I stated that the clutch life was 20,000 miles approximately. Wrong. I should have said 60,000 miles approximately, of course depending on use. I'm sure it may have worried some recent Evora owners, so apologies for that blooper. Okay, so let's crack on then. So in episode 3 I'll be staying in the back of the car and looking at the subframe, suspension, brakes, wheels and tyre options made by Lotus. So we'll start with the subframe, an important part of the car as it contains a powertrain, suspension, brakes and exhaust. There's also a handy place to stick a clamshell on. Now, as I'm sure you are all aware, the chassis or tub, as it's sometimes called, is manufactured by Lotus from aluminium, or as our American cousins say, aluminum. The rear subframe though is manufactured in the Lotus fabrication shop using 10 form high strength low alloy hot rolled steel. It is then sent away to be hot dip galvanised. So why steel and not aluminium? One is expense. But the job that the subframe has to do involves a lot of stress and heat, and steel is better suited for that in the area where it lives. The weight of the subframe is approximately 50 kilograms, which is about 110 pounds. Now the subframe is not just somewhere to shove all the bits in, it also doubles up as a crash structure and is designed to progressively collapse in the event of a rear end shunt. This not only protects the occupants of the car, which is the primary task, but also protects the main tub from damage, which is good as the retail price of a subframe is about £1,700 and a partial body, which includes the tub, is £17,500. If you have a subframe that's been damaged due to an accident, I would not recommend repairing it. I've seen attempted repairs on subframes, but I would not trust them unless done by a real professional. Welding galvanised steel can be extremely dangerous due to the fumes. Bear in mind that, as I said, the subframe is also a crash structure. If it's done wrong, it may not do its job properly. In the event of a rear end shunt, it could either damage the tub or, more importantly, the occupants, which may be you and your loved ones. To replace a rear subframe, you're looking at about 36 hours labour time. Interestingly, Lotus did make some titanium subframes which were riveted together as opposed to welding. Not sure if these were used on the race cars, but would imagine they were very expensive. So they would have saved pounds in weight, but gained many pounds in price. There is one area of the subframe that can get damaged, but is easily repaired. It affects the suspension, and I'll cover that part when I move on to that next. Now that's the subframe done. Not a very glamorous part, but very important. Now onto the suspension, an area where Lotus excels and earned its reputation for producing some of the best handling cars ever made before all the electronic trickery took over. The Evora was a big step up in some of the components used. Most earlier Lotus cars used fabricated steel wishbones manufactured in-house at Lotus, but the Evora uses forged aluminium ones, so let's have a look at these first. I'll give you a basic overview as I don't want to put you to sleep. All the wishbones have a Lotus roundel cast into them and are unique to Lotus and made in Italy. Right, starting at the top, the upper wishbone assembly is the only one that can interchange from side to side and is the same on all Evora models apart from the bushing. Early cars had inner bushes identified with beige markings, and on the intro of the Evora S identified with green markings, which were a stiffer bush. The spherical joint fitted to the outboard end is the same on all Evora variants. Be aware of these bushes if you are ordering new wishbones or replacing the bushes. The hub carrier is made from forged steel and is unique to Lotus. It has a spherical joint fitted to the lower point and is common across all Evora variants. The hub bearing assembly is the same for all four wheels and is common across all Evora variants. It has a speed sensor ring built into it and it is not serviceable, so if it fails, unbolt it, fit a new one, job done. Now the Evora gets a rear anti-roll bar, the first Lotus to get one since the M100 Elan. There are two types, the original one fitted to the normally aspirated cars, which is painted black and is 21mm in diameter, and from the introduction of the Evora S, a slightly larger diameter at 21.5mm was fitted in its coloured grey. The rubber mounts are different for both roll bars. It is connected to the wishbone by a drop link. Moving on now to the springs and dampers. Of course, the ride and handling boys spent a lot of time developing these with the suppliers to fine tune these. The spring supplier was IBAC and the dampers were supplied by Bilstein. There are a few variants, so just make sure you get the correct ones for the car they are being fitted to. Fitted as standard to both the GT430 and the GT430 Sport models, and optional on the GT410 models, were Öhlins, TTX two-way adjustable dampers and double springs. These spring damper assemblies are adjustable for ride height, rebound and compression. Basically a race spec assembly, which Lotus recommends are serviced by an Öhlins agent every 11,000 miles or 18,000 kilometers or 2 years for road use vehicles. They are rather expensive though. If you wanted to buy one rear one, it will cost you $2,350 just for one. And the last component we'll look at is the toe link control assembly. It's a two-part steel forging incorporating a stainless steel adjustment turnbuckle. This is used to adjust the rear toe of the car. So that's all the components that make up the rear suspension, and of course it is all adjustable. Rear toe is adjustable as previously mentioned with the toe link. Camber is adjusted via an eccentric bolt on the rear inboard pivot of each lower wishbone. Just loosen the nut, turn the bolt, and the lower wishbone will move in or out, altering the camber via the guide plate. You may remember I mentioned one area on the subframe that can get damaged. Well, this is the guide plate. If the outside of the rear wheel of the car strikes, say for example, a curb sideways, it can move the bolt and bend the plate and alter the camber to positive. This will affect the handling of the car. I know this from experience after driving an Evora where this had happened, and no, it wasn't me that did it. So that's the suspension covered at the back. The only other thing I'd like to add is that Lotus cars, not just the Evora, are sensitive to incorrect suspension geometry settings. They must be checked with the vehicle set at the mid-laden ride height. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's equivalent of 2 75 kilo occupants plus a full tank of fuel. There are exact measurements for different models, and if you want to know what they are, just send me an email. The tolerances are quite tight. Get it right, it's great. Get it wrong, and you could be going off somewhere you didn't want to go. Now on to the brakes fitted to the Evora. The brakes fitted to the Evora from the start of production were very good. This is down to the Lotus engineers wanting brakes that will be good on a car, even for occasional track use. The brakes should be big enough not to wear out prematurely, but more importantly, provide fade-free operation. Another reason was the fact that the suspension and brakes would cross over onto the new Esprit that was in the early stages of development at the time. This shouldn't be confused with the Danny Bahar era proposed Esprit. Lotus was already running a mule car fitted with a BMW 4.4 litre V8 engine and a new gearbox. So with this in mind, when the Eagle was being developed, forward planning was that they would share components. So this meant that the Evora got suspension and brakes that easily met and exceeded the performance of the car. Now this mule car was featured in an Autocar magazine article back in 2008. Unfortunately, this Esprit project was cancelled. The original Evora had 4-piston Lotus branded AP racing calipers fitted all round. These came with either a bare aluminium colour or options of red or black, and if you want to replace them they'll cost around £300 for the front and about £380 for the rears, and includes the pads. The discs were cast iron, one-piece curved vane ventilated and cross-drilled. Size was 350 by 32 at the front, 332 by 26 at the rear. Replacements will set you back £240 for a front pair and about £280 for a rear pair. Brake pads would cost you about £170 front or rear. Moving on to the 400 series cars, these got a bit of a brake upgrade. The brake calipers came with the options of red, yellow or black and slightly different piston sizes. The Lotus branding was replaced with just AP Racing logo. If you want to replace these, they'll cost around £500 for the fronts and £475 for the rears and include pads. The discs on the 400 and 410 are cast iron 2-piece curved vane ventilated and cross drilled, and size increased to 370 by 32 and 350 by 26 at the rear. The GT430 gets groove discs with J-hook design pattern. Replacements for the 400 410 will set you back 1070 for a front and 1100 for a rear pair. Replacements for the 430 will set you back 1250 for the front and 1200 for the rear pair. Brake pads will cost you about £198 for the front and about £175 for the rear. The handbrake or parking brake uses a cable operated drum brake incorporated into the rear discs. This is common on all Evoras, but the handbrake lever is different on 400 series cars. Here's a tip for anyone who's parking up their Evora for an extended period, and that could be as short as 2 weeks. If possible, make sure your brakes are bone dry. If they are wet when it's parked, you run the risk of the pads sticking to the discs. If they are left in this condition, they can be difficult to free off and even rip bits off the pad. Also, park the car with the handbrake off and the car in gear or park, and this will stop the rear shoes sticking. So that's the subframe, suspension and brakes explored. Do I advocate using genuine Lotus parts? Well, yes I do. They were made for the car, approved, and will come with a 2-year warranty against defects, and it won't invalidate your vehicle's warranty. Now, if you are an owner of a Lotus, you will know there are many aftermarket parts to fit and modify your car with. That's your choice of course, but just be aware, not all are good and can cause problems you didn't have before. Don't get me wrong, there are some bloody good people out there doing things to Lotus cars that the factory won't or can't do because of legalities. Also, if your car is still covered by the factory warranty and you have some problems with it, one of the first questions the factory warranty department will ask is, has the car been modified? If it has, they may reject your claim. Lotus, like any other business, if it can get out of paying, it will. But in fairness to Lotus, they are very happy to help when they can, and are not as black and white as some of the larger manufacturers. Okay, so now let's look at the wheel and tyre options on the Evora from the start of production. There were various different colours, styles and finishes. You could have cast or forged. The red wheel you'll see is especially for the GCC market, which stands for Gulf Cooperation Council and includes Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, etc., where it is a legal requirement for any car manufacturer to supply a spare wheel and a jack with the car, which is a bit of a laugh really, as there's nowhere on the car to store it unless you want to carry it around on the passenger seat. Still, rules are rules. So this is what was available up to the start of the 400 series cars. Another wheel offered was an after-sales option called the Extreme Turbine. These didn't exactly fly off the shelf, but I suppose at over £1,000 each, that's not surprising. I fitted a set on my training Evora and didn't think they looked too bad, but not wow. What do you think? Now the Evora 400 series got a few more options, so let's have a look at these. All of these wheels are manufactured by a company called Rimstock here in the UK. They are an OEM supplier to Aston Martin, Jaguar, Mercedes, Bentley, to name just some of them. A question often asked by customers who contacted me was, what was the paint code for my wheels? Honest answer was, I don't know. Only Rimstock know, and they won't supply touch-up paint, but they will refurbish the wheels if you want to. The other alternative is a good paint shop which should be able to mix up a close match. So that's the wheels. Now let's look at the tyres that Lotus chose. From the start of production until the introduction of the 400 series, you had Pirelli P0s for summer, and winter tyres were Yokohama W Drive. Now the 400 series got a few more options. From start of production up until 18 model year, Lotus fitted the Michelin Pilot Super Sport. Then from 18 model year, the 400 got Michelin Pilot Sport 4S, and this was an option for the GT410 Sport as well. The Evora Sport 410, GT410 Sport and GT430 Sport get the Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 and a sidewall marking of a star identifying it as original equipment to BMW. The Evora GT430 gets Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 XL and a sidewall marking of N0 identifying it as original equipment on Porsche. The winter tyres for the 400 series is the Michelin Pilot Alpine. So that's just about wraps up the rear end of the car mechanically, apart from the rear clamshell. The next section I will move on to is the middle of the car, looking at the tub, the interior, trim and seats, etc. Until then, keep watching, liking and subscribing to this channel. Your interest and support is appreciated by me, and I will be making an announcement soon on how you can support it as a patron for more exclusive content. So until the next time, take care and so long from the Lotus Guru.